Welcome to In Conversation, the space where we go beyond the titles and into the real lives of young professionals rewriting the rules of their industries. On this edition of The Bar, we sit down with Lutho Zono, an admitted attorney and associate specializing in employment law, a space where justice, workplace rights, and human stories interact. From long nights of exam prep to navigating the intense demands of articles and board exams, Luther's journey into law has been one of persistence, purpose, and personal growth. In this conversation, Luther shares her path to admission, the lessons she's learned in a high stakes legal world, and how she maintains balance while building a career grounded in advocacy and integrity. Whether you are a law student, legal hopeful, or simply curious about what it takes to make it at the bar, this one is for you. Luto, welcome to In Conversation.
Hey, thank you so much, Tippy. So, thank you so much for having me as well.
So let's start at the beginning. What inspired you to pursue a career in law, and did you always know you wanted to be an attorney?
Okay. Thanks for that question. Yeah, it's a good one because no, let me start off by saying no. I didn't always know that I wanted to be an attorney, but I knew that I wanted to be part of something involved with justice. So, just to give you a little bit of background, before going to university, I wasn't sure, what I wanted to study, but I ended up settling on law. I mean, settling's a bad word, but I ended up actually choosing law as my first option because I've always been just so passionate about justice. Like when I was growing up, I remember I was that child when my friends and I would be playing, back home who would want to be the mediator. Let's sort it out. Let's find out. And I also, I've always really, really enjoyed reading, mostly like fiction. But in my mind, when those two came together, I did do a little bit of research, but mainly, law seemed obvious to me. So I didn't know that I wanted to be an attorney until I was actually in the course and studying it. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting now that I think about it because I literally found out that I wanted to be an attorney and the kind of attorney that I wanted to be in university.
Can you walk us through your
Yeah.
academic journey? Where did you study, and what were some of the challenges or wins your LLBS during your wins? Sorry.
Sure. No problem. Thank you so much for that tip. So my academic journey, I think, um, obviously for law purposes, the university aspect was quite important, but, I've always been a hard worker, if I can explain it that way, throughout school. I believe in hard work, and in my mind, it's the most important thing. But when I got to university, I still had that belief for sure. But, university was tough for me. I think the transition was hard. And also the fact that I was in university and around all of these like very, very hardworking and smart people, And so for me, that was a wake-up call. It was a wake-up call because I sort of understood that, there are a lot of smart people around me. And I think I sort of saw that hard work really is important. But I wasn't top of the class in university. And I think perhaps if I can give you like a view into my academic journey. In first year, I did well, but, not a shining star, not the best student. I think probably it was in second year when I really started to put in the hours and see the improvement in my marks. And I think I can really attribute a whole lot of that to the realization that, especially in university, the people around you really, really matter because I was in res with super, super smart ladies who knew a lot about the law and were invested in it. And I sort of like, hung out with them and they really assisted me and throughout my academic journey. I think, at the end, yes, I did really well. I was in the dean's list and all of those academic successes, but because of the fact that I stuck with these people. So I think for me, that's a very important part of my academic journey.
So the process of becoming an admitted attorney in South Africa involves a lot of steps. What was your experience like during
Yeah.
articles of flagship?
Oh, yeah, you're so right. Thank you. Thank you for that question. Sure, it is. It actually does involve a lot of steps. So, I think perhaps you may know, but if I can just go into when I started. So I started doing my articles in 2022. I had, the year after I finished, obviously, varsity. And yeah, when if I know your question is more of what was my experience during articles, but it was tough. I think for me, I wasn't going into work and going into articles. I really did not, even though I tried to prep myself, I had no idea, the difficulty of having to apply the law practically in articles. I think we underestimate as students, and in my case, as law students, the kind of on the ground work that's needed to get through articles. And everybody does say that articles are hard. They really are, because you get thrown in the deep end. I think I struggled for like a year. For the first part of my articles, I was constantly feeling under extreme pressure. Not that the next year was like smooth riding, but I had to learn very quickly that, like, the practicality was more important in articles more than the theoretical part that we had really emphasized in university. So it was really tough. And I think once I'd understood that, it really just improved significantly. Like, my articles journey improved significantly. And I am grateful, I must say, though, I'm very, very grateful that I had people, my peers, some of whom I still work with now, to journey with me. And, when we were really in the trenches together and suffering together. So I'm very, very grateful to them who really made it a lighter experience than it might have been had they not been there. But I learned a lot. It was difficult. I improved, but I also learned a lot.
So during your articles, did you have at least maybe a mentor?
Yes, I did. Thank goodness I did have that. And I think thank you actually for bringing that up, because that's such a good point. At the beginning, I wasn't sure of like mentorship because it's not something I'd actively done before. I mean, of course, I've had mentors throughout my life, but it's not something I was intentional about. In articles, what I did was I didn't say, go up to people and say, you're my mentor, but I found people in the firm who I aspired to be like, and who, I loved the way that they practiced law, and I got closer to them. And it helped me so much because they invested in me. I spent time and invested in being around them and learning from them. And it really just improved everything.
So I've heard that board exams are very hard. So how did you prepare for them, and what advice would you give to someone currently in that phase?
Yeah. No, you heard right. No, you heard right. I'm laughing at it now, but back then, when I was really in it, it was not fun. I think, with board exams, like you're saying, they're difficult. And I think for me, in hindsight, obviously, at the time, this wasn't my view, but in hindsight, they've taught me a lot, because I think, writing my board exams, I experienced failure with one of the exams, that I had to rewrite paper 3. And that was hard for me because I associated like failure with a lot of bad things about myself, and I attributed that to myself. But I think it's an important part of growing up. It's not fun. It's not fun. I was very, very sad. I was very, very distraught. And I found it hard to pick myself up, but I had to do it because, with adulting, with working, with every aspect of life, you have to do it. So I think something important that I would advise people going into it is, firstly, accept the fact that board exams are different to university. That's the first part. But
Yeah.
another important aspect of it that I found is that it's important to take the time to understand what kind of learner you are, what kind of student you are. How do you study best? For me, I wish this is something that I had done. I wish I'd gone in and was aware that, for example, that I study better in the evenings, that I take a bit longer when, there's a lot of content. I wish I had known that, because I think that initial preparation stage is very, very important. And then secondly, it's so important to have a proper map of like how you're going to approach it. I initially just went into paper 3, sort of, I mean, all of them, but specifically paper 3, sort of just winging it. And it doesn't work for me. It didn't work for board exams. Like, I had to have a schedule and decide this is the section that I'm going to do it on. So I'd say, number one, understand how you study. And also number two, prepare very well and plan out your time to understand exactly what it is that you need to cover, because it's a lot of content.
For someone who doesn't really know what are board exams, how would you explain
Mm.
it to them?
Sure. Oh, that's interesting. Actually, I haven't thought about this. But I think it's so board exams are the exams that you write when you want to either become an attorney or an advocate, actually. But for attorneys, write them, they're called competency exam. So you write them so that the Legal Practice Council at the end of the day can say that you are competent, at least from an academic perspective, from an exams perspective, to become an attorney. And there's 4 board exams that are currently written. And they cover various aspects of the law. You know, you have paper 1, which deals with courts, paper 2, which deals with wills and estates, paper 3, which is called ethics, but it's, you know, it's like, I think it's called the practical legal ethics. And then you have paper 4, which is your accounting paper. They cover very different aspects of the law, but ultimately they're trying to test whether or not you're competent to, you know, sign and say that you are an attorney of the high court
So,
from a theory
I saw,
perspective.
oh, okay. So I saw that
Yeah.
you're an admitted a team. Does every person who did their LLB have to be an admitted a team?
No, no, that's a good question. That's such a good question. Thank you. No, you know, a lot of people who have their LLBs, and, you know, even some people that I studied with are not admitted attorneys. And I think this is such a good question because coming into law, I didn't know the various options that I had. I mean, thank God that I landed up at the res that I landed up at, and people started telling me about the different options. But if you have an LLB, there's actually there's like a whole host of options that are open to you, you know, to do depending on what you enjoy doing, right? And I think it's quite important that students now take the time to students or anyone actually interested in studying law or who's got an LLB, take the time to figure out what it is that they enjoy doing and, like, you know, what they can do with their LLB. Some people, for example, have gone into banking. Some people are advocates because they, you know, they enjoy advocacy or litigation. Some people are attorneys who, yes, like myself, I am a litigious attorney in that I do appear for the CCMA, etc. But some attorneys are in banking and finance. And it really just depends on what you enjoy doing, because some are investigators. And that's why I think it's important to spend the time to and invest time in getting to know yourself, which, you know, I didn't really do coming into university, but I was very lucky, or like very, very blessed, in the sense that I had my friends, a lot of whom did do that and helped me in my journey to figure out, okay, maybe I actually do want to become an attorney.
So does it mean admitted attorneys are only the lawyers that go to court?
So no, no, admitted attorneys are not all. So for example, that's also another good question. Not all admitted attorneys go to court. And what do I mean by that? So the title is obviously admitted attorney of the High Court. And what that means is that obviously the court has, you know, confirmed your appointment and now you're on the roll of attorneys. However, not all attorneys appear before the High Court. For the High Court specifically, you need an additional certificate where you've attended courses to say you're an attorney and you can also appear before the High Court, right?
Okay.
But for me, I am an admitted attorney and I don't have a certificate to appear before the High Court. But I can appear before the Labor Court and other specialized courts. So the Labor Court and the High Court are on the same ranking, right? The reason why I appear at the Labor Court is because I'm an employment and labor lawyer, or I can appear before the Labor Court. So there are attorneys who are litigious in the sense that they, you know, they go to court and they argue for their clients. But ultimately, the difference, in my view, and, you know, like theoretically, what we've been taught between attorneys and advocates is that advocates specialize in litigation. Their work is going to court, and most of the time, attorneys do the drafting. You know, they do the drafting. They take care of the work of their officers, and a lot of the times they brief advocates to go and appear in court for them or for their clients.
So I want us to talk about the work you do. I saw that you
Sure.
focus on employment law. What's employment law?
Good question. I'm sorry. The reason I keep saying good question is because sometimes you do these things, and I'm sure even with your work, but you don't think about it. You know, you don't think
Yeah.
about like what it could mean. But employment law is law relating to really, you know, employment. And I mean, that seems like a silly way to put it, but it's got to do with a person's employment, but also from the perspective of the employer, right? So it's got to do with the employment relationship and everything surrounding the employment relationship. It's dismissals, it's unfair labor practices, it is unfair discrimination, all of the things that take place at a workplace in a workplace and that are regulated by employment laws are what it is that I do. And it's quite it's got a lot that it entails. But if you want an idea, we deal a lot with unfair dismissals, whether it's an employer wanting to dismiss someone, we're involved in that process. I'm involved in that process, or whether it's an employee who comes to us and says, can we assist them? They've been unfairly dismissed. And all of these sorts of areas of employment law are regulated by the Labor Relations Act.
Now that you're an
And
associate, sorry.
sorry, Tip. So just to add on that, yeah, I said Labor Relations Act and other employment acts like the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, Employment Equity Act. So it's all regulated by these acts.
Okay. Now that you're an
Yeah.
associate specializing in employment law, what does a typical day or week look like for you?
Yeah, so it differs from week to week. For example, the week that I'm about to go into is quite busy in the sense that it's litigious. So from Monday to Wednesday, I'll be in a hearing. Whereas this past week, I was in the office the whole week. It differs, but there are some things that we do from every day on a weekly basis. And like you said, I'm an associate specializing in employment law. From a day to day, there are some things, I'll name a few of them that I am in charge of doing on my responsibility.
Yes.
One would be the correspondence between myself or us as a firm representing our clients with the other side. And when I say the other side, I mean the opposing attorneys or the union, whoever it is that we're dealing with. So it's my responsibility to reach out to them, to email them, to draft letters to them, setting out what we're going to do, either starting a matter or ending a matter, whatever it is to do with the matter for the client. And then also, other than correspondence, it would also be drafting. A lot of what we do has got to do with drafting. So when I say drafting, I mean preparing the papers that are ultimately going to go to court and be seen by the judge. So, if it's labor court papers, depending on the kind of matter it is, if it's an unfair discrimination dispute, I'll be preparing either the statement of claim or the statement of response, or more usually, which, we deal with a lot of review applications in the labor court, I'd be drafting either the founding, all of the types of affidavits, founding, answering, replying. But we also deal with on a day-to-day. So like I said, yes, the correspondence, there's a drafting for the various things. But we also deal with matters of an attorney's practice. So ensuring that our files are in order, etc. And that's quite an important part, because a lot of what we do as attorneys is to make sure that the practice is organized and that things are filed on time. That's quite an important part. And obviously meeting with clients, because that's another difference between attorneys and advocates, is that we meet directly with the client. So we'll set up the meetings. They'll tell us what happened, what was the issue. We'll consult with them. They'll tell us what they want us to do for them, because ultimately they know their matter better than we do. And that takes quite a lot of time to get all of that instruction from them. So yeah, that's what we do on a day-to-day basis.
That's actually awesome. I've heard that a lot of
Mm.
lawyers use the word associate. What does being an being an associate mean?
Yeah, it's just a I mean, yeah, you're right. It's a title, I guess, that's given to different types of attorneys in law firms. So generally, an associate in a law firm is a junior lawyer. And when I say junior lawyer, I'm using the word loosely. I mean, junior attorney. I'm using the word loosely because some associates have 10 years of experience or more. However, it is used, it's more, I think, in my view, a corporate term. So, for example, I've been at the firm for about almost 4 years now. I'm an associate now for 2 years, but it means that so there's three different types of attorneys that are at the firm. There's associates, there's senior associates, and there's partners. So those are the rankings that you go up to depending on whether you meet your I think it's the performance indicators. So as you go up the ranks, you change titles, but first you are a candidate attorney or candidate legal practitioner, and then once you're admitted, you become an associate. And then once you meet your targets and your performance targets for your being a senior associate, you get promoted to become a so ultimately it is the different rankings, and you get promoted up to the ranks up until partner.
Uh, sure. How long does it take to reach the partner level, to become a partner at a law?
Sure, yes, yeah, yeah. It depends, lawyers always like to say this, everything depends, but it does depend because people are different, right? And how we climb our career ladders, so to speak, depends. So generally though, firms, in my view and in my firm, don't, want people to grow, right? So, I mean, if you are someone who really meets your targets every single year, generally it would take you 3 years to be in each level. So 3 years as an associate, 3 years as a senior associate, 3 years as a partner. I mean, 3 years as an associate, 3 years as a senior associate. So it could take about 6 years after admission. However, some people reach the goal 6 years before. Reach the goal faster, a few years before, and some reach it much later because some people, for example, spend maybe 6 years as an associate and 6 years as a senior associate, because really the journey is so different that there isn't a timeline for people to reach partner, because some people actually don't want to reach partner and become senior associates for the rest of their career, for example.
So when you reach partner, does it mean you own some shares in the company or it means something different?
Different kind of partners according to my understanding. So it, I think it, and I am very, I'm not very well versed on this, but it does depend. There are partners who are salaried partners and they are employees and they receive salaries, and there's partners who are band partners. They don't receive salaries, they receive shares, dividends, according to, I don't know, various factors that they take in. So the more senior you become, the more things like shares and dividends come into play. But initially, even within partners, there's rankings.
So has anything surprised you about the legal profession since becoming an attorney, either about the work itself or the industry culture?
I mean, yes, quite a lot of things I would say have surprised me. And when I say surprised me, I mean, I was not prepared for, or I took for granted maybe. I think when I think about the work itself, this is something I may have touched on earlier, but I think, I took for granted how, a lot of the attorneys that I look up to, a lot of the attorneys that are considered successful in the legal industry are people who really are organized. That's the first thing, but also put in the work. They really, really, really prepare. I took for granted the amount of preparation that it takes for people, who want to grow in the ranks in law firms specifically have to put in. And I don't think, maybe I wouldn't say it surprised me, but it's something that I've come to really learn, which I wasn't aware of before.
I've watched a number of law shows, and I've seen that a lot of lawyers
Yeah.
don't have a work-life balance. How do you take care of yourself while navigating demand caseloads and deadlines?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even, at this stage, I mean, I've only, I've been at the firm for almost 4 years, like I said, but even as an attorney, that's been about almost 2 years. So as an associate. So it's a difficult concept, I think. And one thing I can say is that I was watching recently a podcast, and I think the lady in the podcast put it so well in that, and to say that, it shifts in the different stages of your career, because when you're a candidate, a lot of the time, work-life balance may seem like an elusive term, because you're really, not only as a candidate, in fact, in your junior years, you're putting in a lot of the work. As an associate, you are trying to find your feet in the legal industry. But I think, to answer your question, is I do find that I'm a better person, a happier person when I do things outside of work that interest me. So I really think that, recently, as I've been trying to sort of find work-life balance, and I've really been focusing more on, making sure, again, and it goes back to knowing yourself, knowing myself, and trying to figure out, what am I interested in now? Am I still interested in the things that I was, whether it's sports or music or whatever, and trying to intentionally schedule them. I know it seems like it's not a fun thing, but it's putting them in your diary, whether it's with friends or by yourself. And for me, that's been something that's quite important, because it's something I look forward to. It makes me feel rested when I go back to work. And I think that's something quite important that people must keep in mind, because it can be hard to find the time to do things that you like, because the work is demanding.
As a young Black woman in law, have there been any barriers you've had to overcome, and how do you navigate your space in that profession?
Okay, sure. That's an interesting question. I it's an interesting one. And I think, though, Of course, we know that in all industries, Black women face all sorts of barriers, right?
Yeah.
But I think for me, a lot of it has actually been internal. Not to say I've never faced any external barriers, but I think the biggest ones, in my view, have been internal barriers. And what I mean by that is I come from a community, a family. I come from a background where, people around me were not lawyers. I didn't know any Black female lawyers, right? Until I started working. And I think for a lot of Black women, especially those from previously disadvantaged backgrounds like I am, it's hard. I struggled a lot. And I mean, not to say I'm not now, but it's been something that I've recognized now is that a lot of Black women struggle with imposter syndrome. I came in and I didn't understand what it means to take up space in my workplace and, ask questions, be comfortable with the fact that I am there because I deserve to be there. Because I'd question myself, do I know enough? Am I doing enough? And Black women work extremely hard. I think it's something we need to understand. And I think, it's hard navigating corporate spaces without believing that you know what you know. And I think it's something that, yeah, like I said, for me, it's something, I'm still working on it. I'm not there yet, but, I can see the improvement in the belief in myself because it was something that, I struggled with at first.
So, what advice would you give to a young woman considering career
Mm.
in law today?
Wow, sure. Yeah. And I'd say, yeah, there's a lot of things, but, at the top of my mind now is do your research. I mean, we spoke about this earlier. There's so many things you can do even within law. Even within law, there's a lot that you can do. Do you want to be an attorney? Do you want to be an advocate? Do you want to be a mediator? Do you want to be a legal advisor at a bank? There's so much you can do. So I'd say do your research and see how it aligns with what your goal is for your future and what you want for your future, and reach out to someone. I mean, Sepi, so earlier you asked me, do I have a mentor? And I'm thinking now, even while I was in varsity, I was reaching out to people in the legal industry who I aspired to become like, or who, just generally I thought had experience in these areas. And I mean, some of them I am in contact with, some I'm not, but it really did help me get an idea because you come in cold. So yes, do the research, but also try to see, I mean, there's still people in varsity who I'm speaking to now on a personal basis, exactly on what we're talking about, just to give them my experience of what it's been like. And I mean, yes, it's a limited experience, but it's only been a few years, but just from my perspective. So one, do the research, but two, also reach out, find mentors, get people around you who are where you want to be. And I think, yeah, that's quite important. And put in, and I think something maybe that I didn't do as much, but again, I really had the right people around me in varsity. Put in the work in university because I saw it pay out. And, when I say the work is, if you want, for example, to be an attorney, the law firms, especially the bigger law firms, actually all law firms will choose the people who, yes, from the personality and also from the marks, are rank, high up there. So put in the work so that you put at least your foot on the door when you make applications to law firms or wherever it is that you want to go.
You touched about mentorship. Would you say that you are
Mm.
ready to become a mentor too?
This is interesting because I had not thought that I was ready to become a mentor. In my mind, I'm like, oh, I need 10 years, I need this, I need that. But it sort of has happened naturally that I've become a mentor to one or two people because, they reached out to me. They're studying law. And we're constantly discussing, whether they need my assistance with schoolwork, whether they need my assistance with interviews. So in that way, I have become a mentor, and it's really something I take seriously and that I enjoy, about myself and I enjoy doing. Yeah.
So, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received, either professionally or personally, that still sticks with you today?
Sure. As you said that, I was thinking like so many people have said so many great things to me, but something that has strangely stuck because I heard it back in primary school. We had a talk, and it's always been there with me. There was a guy who came to present on us. I can't remember what his speech was, but he said words which, as a primary schooler, you will always remember because they're simple and they're easy. But I think even as an adult, you'll remember he said this to us. He said, if it is to be, it is up to me. And I think learning that has just liberated me in so many ways. This idea that it's in your hands, has in many, many ways inspired me throughout my academic and, work career, but also in in my personal life.
So, what's your go-to activity or self-care ritual after a long day at the office?
Oh, you know what? At the moment, I really am enjoying cooking. I'm enjoying cooking a lot lately. I mean, I've always been a good cook, but I think now I'm really trying to improve myself so that, if I need to cook for my friends at a braai or I'm hosting or whatever it is, I can do it all by myself or, with minimal help. So, I'm trying to make sure I'm an all-around cook. And another thing is I'm quite into like just any physical activity. I used to play a lot of sport in school. I stopped when I was in varsity, but I still do like going for, and nothing intense, walks, but I ensure like that I get some physical activity in a week that helps me relax and just, get downtime. And I mean, this seems like a lot of activity. Some of them I don't do them for a while, but reading also really is a good one for me, and not legal stuff. I mean, like reading fiction and non things that are not to do with my work life.
So, this is my last question. If you weren't a lawyer, what else could
Mm.
what else see yourself doing, or is law the love of your life?
And the reason I'm laughing, yes, law is the love of my life. But the reason I'm laughing is someone recently asked me this at work. But it's an interesting one. I think, I always think that as people, we have so many talents. And I believe the same about myself. The multifaceted sort of personality is always how I've seen myself. And I think, if I wasn't in law, I love radio. Recently there's a show that a couple of times they invite me to speak about child labor issues and on radio. And I've been enjoying that so much. And I think I'll probably be in media or literature, because I love reading, writing, speaking. Those are my like fun to do activities. I'd probably be in media.
Plus, you have a lovely voice, so I'm sure you would do good in media.
Thank you very much for that. You see, you're making me even more excited about my fun extra stuff.
So, I want to take this moment to thank you for taking the time to share your journey with us. So, thank you
Thank
for being with us. I
you.
don't know if maybe there's anything you want to share.
No, to be so other than to thank you very much because I think, even I mean, like all people, um, sometimes work becomes tough and it helps sometimes to reflect like we did in this conversation, how, where I've come from, where I am right now, also I guess where I want to go. So it's sort of like helps one reflect and, feel, I guess, hopeful. So thank you so much for the conversation. And I really, really hope it helps someone. I think like I've said earlier, it really is such a community career. Like the people you either can teach something and the people who you can learn from.